matter where you turn in modern society, we are surrounded by personalities. And personalities tend to be the defining cornerstones of how we receive and understand important ideas and topics in the modern world. But unfortunately, there is a massive downside to this for our civic and personal health. Because when personalities become the focus of our relationship with the truth, and most importantly, our relationship with the issues of our world, we get caught up in the spectacle that they drive, we get caught up in the narrowness that they provide, and we lose sight of what actually matters. So in this video, my friends, I will be explaining how the tyranny of the spectacle of personality has captured the minds of so many Americans, has swept the West, and has produced so much social chaos and discohesion, and I will be providing a way for us to get out of that, reclaim our own moral rule over our attention, and find a better way to relate to truth and the eternal in this modern world. But before we do that, my friends, I hope all of you are doing well today. I am Christian Watson. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy political, social, and cultural commentary with a philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can, my friends, to ensure this project and this channel is successful. My friends, this is a civic conservative project where we are reawakening the promise of the Enlightenment. We are reawakening the inherent principles of the American experiment, and we are looking at the natural truths embedded in man's nature and reflected in his conduct that will help guide us throughout the various chaos and the various messiness of our current era. If this is something you want, if you wish to reclaim the American promise from cultural coercion and also institutional capture, then this is where you need to be. My friend, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming here to think through this with me and to hopefully gain some edification. Thank you so much. Now, please enjoy the video. So, as I mentioned, we have a problem of the spectacle of personality in this society, and I think this problem manifests more generally, and again, how we relate to important ideas in conversations and also how we relate to the truth. Think about the last time you thought about a particular political issue. Just to be a little bit more resonant here, think about the last time you thought about an issue like, for example, the Middle East. What's happening in the Middle East? What's happening in Israel? If you're on the right, you've probably thought about personality. Like when you think about Israel or think about that entire conflict, your mind probably jumps to personalities like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or Piers Morgan, who has had a lot of debates on the issue, or Nick Fuentes, all these different people that are associated with the topic of Israel. If you're on the left, your mind probably jumps to people like Max Blumenthal and sort of the pro-Palestinian movement and the Students for Justice in Palestine people and Mahmoud Khalil and other folks that have also built their brand over in terms of the issue of Israel. Very few people, when they think of Israel or any other issue, that's just one example, any other issue, actually consider the idea for itself, the circumstances of the idea for itself, and use the personality they think of, whether they're left-wing or right-wing, as a filtration system by which they receive information. Now, here is why this is not necessarily a bad thing on the offset, but it leads to a very unfortunate circumstance. Because sometimes we think things are good for us because ostensibly in our appearance they appear to be okay for us, but when we actually see the results in the world, we know they're bad for us. They're bad for our mental understanding. They're bad for our moral development, our character formation. When you let a personality rule over your attention on a particular topic, you are allowing them to direct the scope of what you understand, number one. So what you understand and what you don't understand will be entirely dependent on their will. So in other words, they are your master. They are your cognitive master. They are your epistemic master. You have ceded your role as a moral agent, which is to be someone who has a stake in what you learn to those people. That's the first mistake you made. But we can all be forgiven because we're not perfect, right? But that's the first mistake you made. But second, since you are guided by their will and not by your own self-attention, if they get into spectacle, if they get involved in drama, and if they get involved in distraction, you, unfortunately, your attention will follow that. Which is why the spectacle of personality is so dangerous. It leads people's attention astray, like a shepherd leads his sheep to slaughter, towards places that bring them towards unenlightenment and bring them towards ignorance, and does not actually allow them to engage in the ideas themselves. But this is simply one danger of the spectacle of personality as it relates to any issue. Another danger is that it reduces truth to persons, as opposed to general matters observed in the world. If you want to understand the truth, you don't even begin with a mental concept. You don't even begin with a equation or a problem. You don't even begin with a logical puzzle. If you want to understand truth, all you have to do is look at the world around you. You observe things in the world around you. You ask yourself, do these things have any broader meaning? Do these things work in patterns? How do these things work? You begin to inquire into the nature of things. Then you take this specific knowledge that's taken in this very particular area, and you apply that to the wisdom of the ages. You use what is called philosophical common sense. Not common sense in the vulgar where they say, well, doesn't everyone think like this? No, because people think differently. But philosophical common sense, which was the birthright of the American experiment, which Thomas Paine invoked in his pamphlet, which brought down the castles and the citadels of the old world in a glorious fashion, which Thomas Reid, one of my favorite philosophers, the father of Scottish Enlightenment, used as a tool against speculation and a tool against the subjective idea of truth. You use philosophical common sense, which starts with the idea that there is commonalities amongst the ages, commonalities throughout the ages of human existence, and you take from that and you apply that to your own situation. But none of this happens, this sort of 3-step, 4-step process of reaching truth and understanding truth does not happen until you look at the world and you stop looking at persons. But the spectacle of personality and getting you sunk down into the drama and the nonsense of people and of their limitations essentially reduces truth to a person. So you're not observing the world, you're observing one single quality of the world, and therefore you'll ever know one single thing about the world, and that's how it messes you up in your intellectual and your moral journey. Because no one persists off of knowing one thing. You have to know a lot of different things. You don't have to be perfect in knowing those things, but you have to know a lot of different things. This is, again, the problem with the spectacle of personality. And so it kind of is very important for us to understand how this manifests more concretely as well. I've mentioned several personalities, but there are also shows like, for example, Piers Morgan Uncensored, where a lot of different political issues are talked about and culture is talked about, but whenever they're talked about in a format that encourages antagonism and does not encourage goodwill, does not encourage sound reason, does not encourage clear-mindedness, and does not encourage a dispassionate relationship with the issues being debated. It encourages a kind of antagonism which is meant to raise one's stock in the digital world, which is meant to raise one's applause lines from their tribe, and is meant to raise one's follower count, but actually not raise one's soul or raise one's mind by actually digging into what matters and then digging that up and using that as a tool to help others have that kind of reflection.
I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
well, go
not
on then,
have
say
free,
it. Say
you
the
will
M.
not have
Go on,
free
say.
speech.
Go on, say the M word. Go on.
No.
Hang
Don't
on.
invite. No.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here. You and one Uncle Tom on the left here, and asking her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here.
The spectacle of personality simply aggrandizes the self, while also masking truth behind the figure of the self, which unfortunately also brings us all down. Many of you may have heard of the debate bro culture. People who just get involved in debate as a kind of sport, kind of entertainment for the masses. Again, I won't mention people because this is ultimately not a video about particular kinds of people. All the people I've mentioned so far, I have no strong opinions about them as people, because great minds talk about ideas, small minds talk about people, but unfortunately people are the vehicles by which ideas express themselves in this world, and that means sometimes to get to a broader idea, just like a journeyman goes through certain waypoints on his journey to a destination, you have to get to a certain person, but you don't stay there. You go beyond them. You reference them. You go beyond them to a broader point. But many of you know people that literally engage in spectacle and go on shows just to argue for the sake of what? For the sake of getting dunk clips, 1 second to 10-second dunk clips on social media, for the sake of owning somebody or destroying somebody, and yet building nothing and shedding no light, and therefore keeping you trapped in this kind of bestial mentality where you wish to see other people get destroyed, which unfortunately is a sort of base instinct of man, rather than seeing other people or other things get built up, and by them being built up, you can then have the tools to build yourself up. The spectacle of personality is also harnesses this sort of debate bro-like mentality. So performance and spectacle have this kind of mystical allure to words because, as I mentioned, it taps into these baser instincts of man that then move us, unfortunately. And by moving us towards spectacle and performance, these things actually harm our moral imagination. And the moral imagination are the various different ways by which you understand how to perform certain kinds of moral actions. Because we are not robots, my friends. Morality is not a soulless logical calculation that we all make by use of our reason solely. No, we are actually sensitive beings at one part. We are beings that are emotional and rational at the same time. So the moral imagination recognizes both our rational and emotional nature and says, you know what? I need to be inspired in the course of my duties that reason affirms to me. I need to be inspired to do them. I need to be inspired to go ahead and be the best kind of correctly acting person I can be. And the moral imagination provides a way to do that. But spectacle distracts the moral imagination by bringing it towards a different kind of inspiration. And it's not the inspiration to create or to act towards what is just and correct. It's the inspiration to see the faults in others and to then see and then to then enjoy others getting torn down when their faults, whether they be ideological or personal, are exposed. It's a kind of culture of viciousness where the vicious principles overtake these social sentiments that all of us should have, and indeed, if we're going to have any kind of good society, any kind of good political order, must have, and it utterly displaces what we're meant to be as people living in a civil society. Spectacle of personality distracts from substance and merely gives you the fluff, the sensation of having a kind of victory, put in your favorite mascot, put in your favorite team member, but without actually giving any light to any issue. It causes fuzziness. It causes a bunch of non-clarity to happen, and it causes you to be focused on the game rather than the nature of the game, to put it in colloquial terms. But it also creates a different kind of problem. That's the problem of imitation rather than clarity or originality. You see, if you see your favorite personality dunking on people in a debate, or you see them performing in a certain way that gets a certain amount of views, that for some people whose minds are not rightly ordered by the right ideas, who are fame-seeking or who are simply seek validation in the worst ways possible, which unfortunately are many people in our current society, or merely see status as a symbol of substance rather than seeing status as a symbol of a bunch of other different things that may or may not confer substance, that's going to make you want to behave in a similar way as your personality does. Why do you think, whether it be in music or in politics or wherever, there are a lot of musicians or a lot of commentators, a lot of YouTubers who copy one another? Because they're unoriginal? Well, yeah, that's going to be part of it, but it's also because they're trying to imitate what they think works with their kind of narrow utilitarian calculus in this attention economy. But by doing that, they're actually losing not just what works in the eternal, but also what is good for them and what is right for them in the eternal. They put themselves in a posture where they can no longer have fidelity, which is one of the principles that actually makes society work, have fidelity to what is generally good and truthful, have fidelity to the sort of dignity of other people, and they put themselves in a posture where their only fidelity is a false fidelity, a fidelity that connects to instead what is efficient. The spectacle of personality puts us in a place, puts people who are unordered in their thoughts, who are unguided in their thoughts, into a place where efficiency overtakes fidelity, overtakes veracity, and by doing that, makes them a wanderer going towards a destination that may or may not work out. Someone shooting in the dark for some kind of cultural succor. Spectacle of personality, my friends, is a danger in this respect. So, in order to fully see this, we have to actually give an anatomy of personality. If you give an anatomy of what personality actually is and how personalities deal with both virtue and vice in a way that can be contrasted and understood, you will then understand exactly why it's not very good, other than all the reasons I've already listed, to put so much of your trust in personalities. Then after that, I'll provide a rubric for all of you so you can use it. So, for example, if we're going to do the anatomy of personality, you have something on your screen right here. There are several different things that personalities in the public discourse or wherever use, and they are contrasted against substantive things. So, for example, charisma. There are a lot of people who are charismatic, who speak very well. A lot of people who sound very well. Some people may say, I'm one of them. I've heard this before. But it doesn't matter if someone sounds well or speaks well. You must ask yourself the question, is what they are saying well? Which is why substance should always, in your calculus, take hold over charisma. Confidence versus correctness. A lot of people throughout history, a lot of demagogues, a lot of evil people, have managed to convince good, well-meaning people to do evil things simply by speaking confidently, while having no ounce of correctness within their mind, thoughts, or spirit. You must not be tricked by how something sounds. You have to be enlightened by what something is. Allure versus edification kind of goes to the other point. Some people have this kind of traction, this kind of presence. The kids call it aura these days, although I think the word aura is much older than it's being used, and I kind of tragic how this stuff is limiting our vocabulary, but that's a different point. That just pulls you in, and that alone can make you endeared to somebody. But if someone's allure is going to come at the cost of your edification, at the cost of the refinement of your mind, then their allure is going to be a detriment to you. It is only going to look good, but it's going to feel terrible when all's said and done. Aggression versus clarity. Personalities that are boisterous and aggressive and sensationalists get the most attention. Look at Paris Hilton, for example, back in his day. Look at all the different gossip mongers of the 90s and the 2000s. Look at all the different shock jocks of the radio in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Look at all the different people on YouTube who are debate bros that try to drum out spectacle. Regardless of what time period, there is a point in investing in aggression over clarity, because clarity might give someone the tools to think for themselves, but aggression distracts them from your flaws and your errors and the errors of your personality and puts them in a place where they're wondering what you're going to do next. So the focus is on you and not on the truth. Once again, personality has this kind of tension. Substance versus performative hollowness. The whole idea of virtue signaling, which is seen in many cases, many activists especially, is simply someone who has the appearance of virtue without having the substance of virtue. And so, if someone has the appearance of virtue, they may stand in a posture where they say, this is wrong, this is bad, but their own ideology may contradict that statement. Their own actions may contradict that statement, and what they're calling bad or wrong may not actually be bad or wrong if we actually understand what those terms mean. That's why it's hollowness, as opposed to having a substance from which you stake your claim upon, that you know what is bad or wrong, as opposed to simply performing it. Conscience versus opportunism. Acting according to your conscience, which affirms your moral sense, which affirms your relationship with first principles, is going to, unfortunately, in the world of personality, mean little when opportunism, what opportunity you can get, what advantage you can get, reigns supreme, which is why the spectacle of personality is so dangerous. Passion versus reason, the same kind of thing. When your passions overtake your ability to think clearly and stay on the path of reason, you act in the manner of a beast, not a man. Vanity versus humility. Vanity is important. And vanity is actually the reason why it is so important to stay away from personalities and stay away from the spectacle of personality, because vanity itself gives personalities an inflated sense of what they are, and it also takes them away from any kind of substantive appraisal of what they are. The great Madame Germaine de Stael, one of my favorite philosophers of the Enlightenment, wrote in her book on the passions a short passage about vanity that I wish to read all of you right now. She said, and I quote, "The vanity of superior men leads them to aspire at distinctions to which they have no right. The foible of great genius continually recurs in history. We have seen distinguished authors value themselves chiefly upon the trifling success which they have obtained in public affairs. Warriors, courageous and firm, ministers, flattered beyond everything with praise bestowed upon their indifferent writings. Men who have possessed great qualities, eager in the pursuit of petty advantages. In a word, as the imagination inflames all passions, vanity is much more active in the pursuit of success, which is doubtful, and more anxious to be thought and to possess talents on which it cannot depend. Emulation excites our real qualities. Vanity takes the lead in everything in which we are deficient." De Stael is saying that vanity attacks the imagination by allowing the passions to overtake it and then put you in a posture where you cannot accurately evaluate what you're good at. Whereas emulation simply looks at your real qualities with no absolute interference with the imagination and says, this is what I'm good at, and therefore let me bring the most of this out. In other words, in order to guard against the vanity of personalities, in order to guard against your own vanity as a person, forget being a proper personality, you must have a strong moral imagination, a well-ordered imagination that's going to keep your passions down and keep your mind fixed towards the eternal, keep your mind fixed towards first principles, keep your mind fixed towards natural law, keep your mind fixed towards the things that are going going to feed you and going to keep you going, going to keep your conduct oriented towards the right way, not the efficient way. But the moment you say, no, I'm going to go for vanity, I'm going to go for efficiency, I'm going to go to whatever inflames me, that is the moment you get dragged down into the mud and you're now somewhere on a live stream getting called a locale by people that don't appreciate you, don't understand you, because you decided to perform for somebody just to get some status. This is the problem we all face when it comes to the spectacle of personality. And this is the problem inherent to this entire kind of system. Reflection is the faculty that keeps us in check, that refines our minds, and also keeps us astray from that which would take us away from what is correct and what is true. Education allows reflection to have teeth. You're no longer reflecting, you're now acting towards a proper posture. That is what we must do, my friends, to escape the spectacle of personality. But that begins with what we consume, and that begins by reclaiming our own self-rule. You see, the founders themselves, it's actually quite American to be anti-personality, because the founders themselves were so concerned with the ideas being received as opposed to their personalities being received that they wrote under pseudonyms. People think pseudonyms are just a way to be anonymous. Pseudonyms are a way to say, stop focusing on who brought this to you and focus on what is being brought to you so you can relate it to your own life and you can relate it to what is actually true in general. To be American is to be anti-personality, because to be American is to be concerned with the ideas that form your country, to be concerned with the natural truth of men that have nothing to do with a person and everything to do with our orientation towards truth, towards the capital R right. To be an American is to be anti-personality, because to be an American is to be concerned with truth, and truth has no mask, truth has no personality. A society that is postured towards the truth cannot fall into tyranny, because tyranny requires people to forget eternal truths about how they're supposed to be living as human beings and what their dignity is as human beings. My friends, as I said, we have to all resist this, but to resist this, we have to understand what to look for to resist it. So here's a rubric I'm going to give all of you to kind of resist, how to maintain this moral clarity in this age of mass distraction where these personalities want to vampirize your time and your efforts. First, you have to understand something. You have to ask a question. Can I understand the matter being talked about, whether it's taxes, whether it's Israel, whether it's abortion? Can I understand the matter that is being talked about, independent of who is talking about it? If the answer is no, you have a problem. And that includes me. If you don't understand what I'm saying, independent of Christian watching the personality, stop watching me because I'm doing something wrong or you're doing something wrong. You need to go and try to get your mind correct, because it's not about me. It's about what is inside of me that is coming out as I speak to you. This is not about me. This is about your development. It's about your journey. It's about the truth. So that's the first question you have to ask. Number two, is my interest in this topic one of truth and substance or entertainment? Why are you watching someone? Why are you reading a particular article? Why are you watching a certain video? Why are you watching a particular episode, a podcast episode? Are you doing it because you're entertained or because you want to actually know what is going on? You want truth. If the answer is entertained, again, you have to check your compass because your compass is not correct. Another question. Does person X, whatever the personality is, does their approach to this subject make me think or merely react emotionally? If someone is making you react emotionally every time that you see them, and that's all you're getting out of it, there's no thought, there's no substantive thought, it's just harming your biases, you're essentially being given a drug, and you're high. And when you're high, you're constantly trying to chase a certain sensation. You're not trying to get to anything beyond that temporary pleasure. You're in a posture where pleasure is ruling you, your passions are ruling you, not your mind and not your conscience. And therefore, you're in a posture where your humanity has been reduced to almost nothing in that moment. Fix that. Another question you have to ask yourself, and beating this spectacle of personality. Does any of this move me towards rightful conduct? That is, conduct ordered by a rich understanding of first principles and the nature of things, both in posture and in action. Again, if it doesn't, stop watching what you're watching. Stop following who you're following. It's not good for you. Another question. Is their approach clarifying or confusing? So when you listen to somebody, you have to ask yourself, wait, what in the world's going on? Not because you're unfamiliar with the information, but because they're obfuscating it. Or do you understand what's going on? Even if you're not familiar with the knowledge, you understand what's being said to you. And most importantly, what are the underlying principles under their claims? What do their claims imply? If you follow this short rubric, you will defend yourself against every huckster, every vain rhetorician, every personality that wishes to vampirize and parasitize your attention to feed their hollow media brand and to decay the public mind. You will defend yourself against every propagandist. You will defend yourself against every politician that wishes to simply tickle your ears but not actually go towards what they're supposed to be doing as a statesman. You will defend yourself against every trickster that employs the English language, the Spanish language, the Greek language, whatever language that employs speech to confuse, befuddle, and put you in their hand. You will have an impenetrable defense if you use this rubric and you remain oriented in it. The moral imagination, my friends, is not a passive quality of man. It must be fed. It must be fed in a way that is going to continue to inspire you towards that guiding North Star of truth. It's going to continue to inspire you towards fidelity and goodwill amongst your neighbors. It's going to continue to inspire you towards justice. If it is not fed, all you have is your base desires. And you are at war with your base desires every day. The only difference between civilized man and primitive man is that civilized man managed to conquer and quash his base desires and say, you know what, I am made and designed for something higher by Mother Nature, and I'm going to take what I am given, my gifts, whatever they are, I'm going to use them to build, not to subsist, but to build. If you feel like you're just living in your life, you're just surviving or existing, you need to understand you are a human being. You are man. You are meant for something more than just exist. You are meant for something more than simply subsist. You are meant to build, to create, to be great. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Don't let any person tell you differently. Don't let any politician, any king, any commentator, any YouTuber, I don't care who they are. Don't let them tell you differently. The moral imagination is going to be our key, my friends, to achieving a revolution of the mind, a healthy culture of the heart and of the mind. If this is something you want to be a part of, I encourage you to resist the spectacle of personality. Use my rubric as much as you want. Clip this video, do whatever you want. And join the Pensive cohort, which is my attempt to build a culture, especially of younger people, that is going to reclaim the philosophies of Americanism, of the Enlightenment, and reassert them vigorously in the public discourse. If this is something you're interested in, like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever you can, my friends, to ensure our message is successful. My friends, if you wish to donate to me as well, please feel free to do that. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.